Hello. Welcome to Night Clerk Radio, episode 117, where we are doing our biannual traditional Discord crawl, which I'm naming the Neverending Discord Scroll for reasons which I'll get into in a second. But first, before we cover topics, I'm going to do things in the right order this episode and do announcements and shout-outs. First, just a little heads up, I'm going to give it on your behalf. Mr. Ross Payton is going on vacation for the second half of this month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this will be the only public episode released this month. And then I will do something solo. I'm planning on doing it solo. May tag in somebody if I realize I don't want to talk into a microphone by myself for 30 minutes. And that'll be for the patrons to keep our patron obligation going. But otherwise, yeah, have fun, Ross.
Yeah.
Bring back lots to talk about.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm going to Japan to visit my brother, and it's going to be pretty neat. Going to spend a little time in Tokyo, then Fukuoka, and then we're going to Shikoku, which is the more remote and rural island of Japan, and see sites like Scarecrow Village, which is a remote rural village in Shikoku that is so many people left. The people who stayed behind started setting up scarecrows so they wouldn't feel so lonely.
Oh.
And it's become kind of a tourist attraction. So, haunted in the pretty literal sense. Like, that is haunted AF. I'm looking forward to seeing this stuff. And I'll be taking lots of photos and some video and stuff like that. And I'll probably stop by a music store too. Yeah, I should look up to see if there's any vaporwave music stores in Tokyo.
I think they probably have one or two. It's not the biggest city, but Tokyo's probably got a couple record shops, and they probably got some.
Yeah, they might have heard of this vaporwave stuff.
Maybe. Maybe better luck down in Nagoya.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, we got a lot of things we're going to see and do, and delicious food.
Yep.
All that jazz. Next month, I'll report back and have some stuff to share with y'all.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. But for today, back to Discord. So we have a Discord. It's a part of our Patreon community. We've done this many times, but I always feel the need to introduce newcomers to the concept. We have lots of channels where people post music they're checking out, music recs. So every so often, I have trouble keeping up with it. So I've made the excuse of doing an episode where I just try my best to listen to a bunch of recommendations. And I'm calling this one the Neverending Scroll because I feel like there was so much more posted between this episode and the last time we did this than previous times. Now, part of that is that I'm trying to limit it because there's one episode, I think it was maybe this time last year, where I was like, I'm going to pick everything in a time period. And I just put it's like 40 or 50 albums, which you can't really listen to anyway. And then, even if we didn't talk about them, I just wanted them in the show notes so other people could get those recommendations. And it was just a logistics nightmare I've talked about before. So I tried to keep it. I was scrolling back and I was like, I'm pretty far, huh? And I was like, only in September still. I was like, oh, Jesus. So, I tried to focus on self-promo stuff because we have a self-promo channel. So there's a few albums connected to people on the Discord. And then the others are just sort of vibes, just stuff that looked interesting or I didn't know the artist for my picks. I mean, Ross, you're picking Infinity Frequencies.
I didn't post it. Someone else posted it. So it's
I know. No, these are, as usual, these are nothing that we've posted. These are other people's posts. But yeah, I just felt like very vibes. I just tried to keep it to about 6. So it's 12 things today, kind of 6 each. No samples as usual for these episodes. We're just going to try to talk about them. Try not to make this be like an hour.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll see. So this is really like a survey course of what's been going on the Discord the past month and a half.
Yeah.
Basically. But I still think there's a lot of cool stuff we're checking out. So as always, anything we talk about will be in the show notes. Whatever I do choose, maybe as an outro sample, I'll indicate that one specifically in the show notes if you like it. And I think we should probably just get into it. So do you want me to MC this, Ross? Do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'll do it. I'm in charge. I'm the big boy. Okay. First album is also The First Machine by Infinity Frequencies. New release from them last month. Mm-hmm. I know you're a huge fan. I like them, but I don't think I've listened to them quite as much as you do.
Yeah.
But I felt like this was, in the tradition of those good broken transmission loops, a lot of little short tracks of under 3 minutes, just quick ideas, get in, get out. The one thing for point of discussion is that I'm not as familiar with the other work, but this one felt more like ominous or darker than previous albums. It felt a little spookier. And I don't know if that's because it was like an October-ish release or a mood or what.
Yeah, I could see that. Interestingly enough, one of the things I noticed was it seemed to be like higher in like higher in the treble than in the bass than previous albums. So I don't know if that it felt more like, signal interference, like more static, or it just more disrupted than previous ones. But I was listening. It's perfect for late night listening. Infinity Frequency is one of my all time favorite artists. I love their stuff. And yeah, I mean, this is only like a 28-minute album. It's the perfect. You can just listen to it. I know I'm going to be listening to it on the plane to Japan.
It's a lot of loops to this album. It's a long trip.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably just going to make him.
I just listened to one Infinity Frequencies album 30 times.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to make a playlist of every single Infinity Frequencies. That'll eat a couple hours out of my time.
Yeah.
So, and then I only have 8 more hours left on the flights.
That's right. Yeah, those long flights are brutal. Yeah, I've done the Japan flight several times, and I slept for 8 hours and I got another 8 to go.
Yep. You gotta really pace yourself there. You gotta really have a game plan going in. So this is just peak signal wave. I'm really glad to see that Infinity Frequencies has not lost their touch. They're still just putting out bangers. So highly recommended.
All right, let me do that one first because I figured we maybe say the most about it. Next up is Tempat Angker, which by Various, which is like a really cool concept album. There's not a lot to discuss musically. It's more of like an archive idea, I guess is how I would phrase it. But it is just a collection of sound effects, voiceovers, like monologues or conversations, and like music and sound effect stings from Indonesian horror, which is interesting to me because it is a genre of horror that I like a lot and that don't really engage with as much, but anytime I've seen it, it's really cool. It's got a lot of that, heavily influenced by the cultural export of America while still being its own thing. Yeah. Particularly culturally, which is the most interesting thing about other cultures' horror is what's scary to them. So they have their own sets of like myths and demons, like the Padanggang and like floating gut heads and stuff. It's a cool genre. I think it's, again, not much musically to talk about. I just listened to there's like little samples on Bandcamp, and it's interesting,
This is described as a Halloween mixtape.
Yeah.
From music researchers who were pulling these samples from Indonesian horror. So Indonesia, those horror movies are very interesting to me as well because, it's an insight into a culture that I have very little knowledge of. Indonesia is an Islamic country, but it also has very strong animist and folk religion and folk horror sort of cultural elements in there. And so these movies kind of, like they're witches and shaman fighting, witches casting curses on people, shaman trying to fight them off, until finally the imam shows up to pray away the evil, at least in a couple of the movies that I've seen. But it's this little peek into a huge genre of films and history that we have almost no access to. Like you really have to go out of your way to find these. Like online horror streaming service Shudder has posted some Indonesian horror films, which is how I saw them, but that's about it. So it's just a really cool insight. I really wish that they would have a download only version of this because I don't want to buy a cassette. And it comes in a double cassette pack, which it might be a contractual thing, but I really don't want another cassette. I got so many cassettes already. But they've listed like 20 or 30 movies that they sample from 1971 to 2015. So it's a wild concept for an album, and I wish I could listen to the whole thing without having to buy a cassette.
Yeah. That's really the only downside is the release format. Okay, next up we have Quiet Storms by Delore off Sunset Grid as the record label. And this is, I have all these like just single sentence, like very vibes. It's a very vibey episode today. Nothing but vibes, which I just thought this was like great late night corporate wave style lo-fi, working late, working with computers, enjoying your technology, living your luxurious petite bourgeoisie, life of
I mean, it's still jazzy. Yeah, it's very, not as, I didn't maybe I was listening to it late at night too, so I don't really pick up as much of the lo-fi elements, but it was still really good. Like, I mean, by that I mean like crackle or static or whatever, but like it was very smooth. Like that was the thing. One of the tags on it is classic vaporwave, and yeah, this is like vaporwave as vaporwave. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It's not a subgenre. It's just pure vapor.
Yeah, I guess lo-fi. It's not truly lo-fi in the way of like lo-fi hip hop or like really slushy stuff, but I just call that genre kind of late night lo-fi.
Yeah, that's fair. It's not as energetic as some other genres, and
and I think really more that like enterprise culture. I mean, that's one of the names of the first track, and that like corporate wave again. That sort of like faux luxury, that like that upper middle class kind of petite luxury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
is I think the great vibe. But yeah, it's really good at it.
Quite fun.
That takes us to our next album, which is Bellow by Witchbolt. I don't know. I'm hesitant to say this type of stuff, but this might have been one of my favorites that we listened to out of this pack.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if, partially it's really good. And it's like doing, not that these numbers really matter, but it's doing like crazy view numbers on YouTube for a dungeon synth ambient. Mm-hmm. So I guess something about them is very favorable to the algorithm, because after I listened to this once, all their other albums like started showing up in my feed.
Yeah.
Like they completely took over. It was very interesting. But anyway, so this is like dungeon synth, super, super ambient, very mellow compared to even some of the other albums that I listened to from them. I don't know. I think I really liked it. I don't know if I was just in the right mood when I listened to it or something, but like that ambient atmospheric sort of vibe just really, really did well with me.
Yeah. I mean, I've also been algo synced. I've seen this Witchbolt, some of the other albums pop up on my recommends, and I've actually seen this album linked on other Discords as well, so it's not unique to just our little Discord. It is spreading pretty rapidly. I think
it has like 700,000 views.
Yeah, and some of the other ones have on their channel have over 100,000 views. So yeah, I think the real interesting thing about this is I don't really see too much in the way of dungeon synth ambient. Like most dungeon synth is very, very structured, kind of Baroque or themed on medieval music, and pretty either war or festival or, like the Lego Castle album we just reviewed. But like having something a little lower key, lower pace, more ambient, but still having those dungeons and elements is really nice. And it's really cool. And they actually, I look at their YouTube page, they have a itch.io page. They do RPG stuff, which is not surprising, really. If you think
I wonder if they've ever connected with like Morkborg or anything. They feel very in that aesthetic.
Oh, they do video games too, so I guess they're doing a little bit of everything.
Okay,
yeah,
it's cool.
So yeah, again, Dungeons and Ambient should be more of a thing, I think.
We got to move into the ambient phase of because a lot of it that we talked about before is much more in the style of like RPG music, and I just want vibe music.
Exactly. So. I'm in a vibes era,
Yeah, well, this is the vibes era. All we say is vibes anymore. It's vibes and cooked. Those are the only two words.
Hell yeah.
And you have to figure it out from context what I'm talking about. So next up, a little bit of a genre switch up. We are doing In Bloom by Dante Leray, which is a really cool like down-tempo mix of hip-hop and ambient electronic kind of experimentation, like soundscapes over hip-hop. It's really cool. So sounds like it comes out of like an improv set with another composer.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like freedom to it. It's really just a nice little pleasant listen. I think it's interesting. A lot of what we picked is just sort of like this. There's maybe like one or two albums that are different genres, but I feel like a lot of what I picked is just anything in this like soothing, meditative, beach driven kind of ambient. A lot of this stuff came up and I really liked all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I quite like this too. A couple of the tracks have someone rapping over it, and it was very good flow. Like it was, but yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of. It's more complex than typical lo-fi hip hop. Like it's.
That's unfortunate that genre has gotten really taken over by just like lo-fi girl thoughts. Whereas it's really just more like down tempo, very chill.
Yeah,
very like synth electronic inspired kind of jams.
Yeah, but if you're tired of Lo-Fi Girl, but you want something lo-fi, this is a really good album to look at.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Definitely worth checking out. And, in our genre whiplashing, next up is a great album titled The Theory of Premonitions Mabisio off Dream Shore. And this was just like, we're back into like dark chill wave. I don't know. These are one of those ones where you hate to talk about genre, I guess. Like chilled drone wave. Like it's like sludgy and pulsing and a little droney here and there. Very like a lot of like rain and it's a dark, stormy, like drone ambient album, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Genre descriptions fail me here.
Yeah. Honestly, when I looked at the album cover, I thought it was going to be Barber Beats. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it did throw me off a little bit. But like, honestly, it's not. It kind of feels similar to a Barber Beats album in that like space of like the kind of music I want to listen to at a particular time of day. Like I'm winding down, but I'm not like trying to fall asleep yet. And, like I've talked about many times, it's like they have to write the music for the right time of day. And this is like early evening music for me. So not late. Okay. Night. Like Witchbolt's like late night, like Infinity Frequencies. That's when I'm like, I'm going to go to sleep in like an hour. I want something to like really, relax to. Yeah, it's ambient, but like there's a little more to it than.
Yeah, it's not totally pure drone. It's just got that like slush atmospheric soundscape going on. So if you're in the mood for that, it's a really good example of it, I guess is how I would phrase it.
Yeah.
But if you're not into that, maybe you'll be into our next album, which is again completely different because I didn't organize these in any way whatsoever. But next up, we got Cyanide by future funk master Cyan Blue. Unfortunately, didn't work out to do this one on our September new music, kind of the way recording schedule worked out. Or I wanted to. Been on my list of artists ever since I checked out a few compilations and kind of was trying to get into future funk over the summer. So this is my makeup on, mentioning this, and hopefully next time it works out that the recording schedule works out to do whatever the next album is. Because again, I think it's in this very modern from a future funk. I love like very chopped. I love all the sample editing to the point where like you barely know what's being sampled. Just that like really like ripping another song apart and rebuilding it, or many songs apart in a lot of cases, and like rebuilding them into something new.
Yeah, Plunderphonics as intended, right? Like,
yeah. And I think like this sort of future funk like this, and we did That's Matt, who's also like a really skilled sample chopper. That's like some of the most interesting, like pure Plunderphonics going on right now for me.
Oh, sure. For me, like this is part of this trend I've been seeing of, or maybe not even trend, like transition future funk away from the city pop, 1980s Japanese sound to like the late 90s, early 2000s Daft Punk / French house sound. And this is like discotheque, like the songs I'm guessing that are sampled in here were bangers in discotheques in Europe in like the late 90s. It's really fun. And like, I love Daft Punk, and I still nod my head to Alive, the 2007.
Not the movie.
No. The album. Yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
The 2007 like live album. I think that was called Alive, but
I don't know anything about Daft Punk.
But yeah, it's really fun. Like it's incredibly lively, really interesting techniques, and really interesting use of Plunderphonics. And yeah, it's not, if you're tired of city pop, man, this is where to check in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It brings us to our next album, Cool World by Chat Pile, who I had not heard of. Like the name sounds vaguely familiar, and they're an Oklahoma City band. So I didn't know if like Baz has ever mentioned them.
Okay, well, I know that Chat Pile is a very Oklahoma thing. Okay. So chat piles are basically it's from mining. So chat is fragments of rock, limestone, dolomite, waste rejected in lead, zinc milling operations. And so they're all over like Oklahoma and in Missouri of these big piles of chat in like in Pitcher, Oklahoma. They often have lead contaminated dust. And so they're fucking Superfund sites. And so you're just driving around, and you see this big pile of rock, and then you're like, oh, and the wind's blowing. It's like, oh, I guess I'm breathing in lead dust now. Cool.
It's good for you. It's fine.
Yeah, that's why I picture you can't go there anymore. It's fucking very hazardous to your health. So it's very appropriate. And I think on the cover of this album is like the giant cross that Indiana that we every time I drive up to Gen Con where you pass it, it's just giant metal.
I don't know if it's the same one, but it is a giant cross.
It is a giant cross. There's probably one in Oklahoma, and that's the one it is.
I'm sure there are many throughout that area.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a cross-laden zone.
But yeah, chat pile is just like our state has been wrecked by fucking mining and no one's paying to clean it up. So we just have to deal with all this toxic shit in our air and around us. So very appropriate name for a metal band.
Yeah. And that's what this is. This is like super slushy, grungy sludge metal. I think of them as like they're interesting. It's like a little more experimental in times, I thought. And like it sounded to me like a really sludgy Jesus Lizard, who's like a 90s rock band. So I think if you're into that kind of like sludge, grimy sludge metal, I think this is like a really good example of it.
Mm-hmm. I don't get into metal that often, and I was surprised how easy I really got into this album. Like, it's real easy to slip into and be like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah, because they're all and Jesus Lizard too is like it's all like noisy, should be listened to loud, and I really liked it. I really liked it. So they have one other album I'll probably go and check out.
Hell yeah!
So that brings us into our self promo-ish block of 2 albums. So first up is Super RETROID 2049, DNA Resequenced by Below the Smoke, who I think also releases music as Burger Smoke. Mm-hmm. And this is a big compilation for charity for Girls Who Code, which is a organization to get women, close the gender gap in tech, basically get women into and maintain them or retain them rather in STEM jobs. Mm-hmm. So it's just a big old love letter to Metroidvania music, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah. I really like this idea of taking video game music as an inspiration for dungeon synth and more industrial kind of music. And now you can't even listen to Nintendo music without a fucking dedicated app. Thanks, Nintendo. So yeah, but like I love Metroidvania or Metroid as a game series and sci-fi badass music. Yeah. What more?
Yeah, and there's a bunch of guest artists, it looks like. They're out going by the names. One thing I really liked about this is that it captures also some of the more like crushed and harsh aspects of Metroid music. Because I remember like some of those Metroid tracks, partially just by virtue of being on like NES and SNES, having some like really crunchy, harsh music, like especially around like bosses or like other stuff that's supposed to be spooky, like the Metroids themselves. So I like that some of the later tracks captured that too, and not just being like nothing but the nice overworld melodies and themes and getting into some of the grimier parts of it.
Yeah.
The other one is Drum Machine by Arsenal Mekebe, which is like, I love this because it's so different from anything I listen to. It's like Ugandan drum and bass, basically. So it's Ugandan beats through their sort of live percussion and like different percussive instruments, but with a little bit of like an EDM electronica feel to it.
Yeah, but, like the show notes go into it a little bit longer. Like reverse engineering Roland's iconic TR-808 beatbox, they devised a steel cast percussion machine that allows Arsenal Mekebe to seamlessly integrate bass heavy electronic sounds into their frenetic performance. It's this device that lies at the core of the debut album, which why it has such a unique sound.
Yeah. It's really cool. So again, like you were saying, so this modified 808 against all the live auxiliary percussion that's native to Uganda is really an interesting listen.
Yeah, there's like some incredible beats in here, like some really interesting rhythm structures and like, damn, they go hard.
It's interesting because you hear all that, but then you do hear like these things like, oh, that's like a modified 808 tom or like the hand claps and stuff. And it's like, such a cool project. Don't really have a lot else to say other than like really should check it out. It came out September of this year. It's just really fascinating. I guess if anything, part of me like as I wish it was longer, but
okay, yeah.
I also get it. I mean, it's an interesting sort of novel debut release.
Well, you're a big drums guy. Like
I am a big drums guy, so I could, maybe I don't know, 30 minutes of drums is somebody's upper bound, but it's not mine. God damn it.
Yeah. No, I get it.
But that is true though. It is like actually kind of, it's very frenetic at times. So it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
In like a good way.
It's not a casual
like,
listen in that regard.
No, because there's so much happening and it's so intricate. And like you're saying, a lot of the rhythmic structure, that rhythmic vocabulary is going to be very different from what you get in like American music or something.
Yeah, it's one of those albums that like you're like, what the? And you kind of like, if you weren't paying attention, like, wait, what the fuck's going on? You need to rewind and re-listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So a super engaging listen. Really, really enjoyed it. I'm glad they shared it. Next, back into the realm of hip hop, this time with a little bit of a jazz blend to it. We have All We Do by Radio Hop, which, you know, this sort of fusion of hip hop and jazz, which has been really the case in some sense for as long as hip hop's been a thing. But I feel like really bringing in more modern jazz fusion elements, or being more explicit about it even in the last, I don't know, 10 years. And I say that because I remember the first time really thinking about something being like jazz fusion influenced would be like To Pimp a Butterfly, which is Kendrick Lamar's, one of his big albums.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I think that was 2015.
Yeah.
I believe. It's a great album. This is, I don't say similar because it's conceptually similar. That's hip hop and jazz. And that's the only connection I'm making. There's not really a lot of lyrics going on here. So like To Pimp a Butterfly has like, you know, a lot of like poetic discussion of his life and his thoughts. Yeah. This is purely instrumental. So it's not really a fair comparison, 100 one-on-one. Yeah. Just.
Yeah. I know this. I'm as a jazz casual listener, this did remind me a bit of like Adam Neely's work in terms of like it's sort of like technical like complexity and sort of liveliness. Like it's very upbeat, it's very energetic. I mean it slows down sometimes obviously, but like it's for me it's kind of like contemporary, like it just says jazz and fusion hip hop, so like, or jazz rock, and like those are pretty good. Jazz funk especially is the kind of vibe I get. But that level of like, I love jazz and I really want to explore it, and I have some interesting ideas about it. But it's a very technical album, I guess, in that regard. So
sure, and I think that also comes from, if you go by the liner notes, it's really a bit of like a big musical collective. So Radio Hop themselves are four people. Piano, guitar, bass, and drums. A pretty standard quartet. But they have a lot of other people bringing in, there are, some parts with vocals and rapping. Track 5 has vocals, like 5 and 6. There's a few in the middle. But there's like all this different percussion. There's all these different ideas. There's flute coming in and out. So there's a lot going on. It's a lot of influences. And it's really, really fusion in like the truest sense of like, we're just going to mash a bunch of stuff together.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of, it's very, exploratory in that regard, I guess, trying out new things. Yeah, and I forgot about the vocals. There's so many albums to listen to. I guess I'm big.
I know. It's hard to talk about 5. It's like having anything. Yeah. And I only remembered it because I'm looking at the Bandcamp and there's like, the featuring. So I was like, oh yeah, those did have vocals on 5 and 6. So that's why, I'm really just trying to like advertise these out.
Oh yeah.
Rather than analyze them, and hopefully other people go check them out and enjoy them because I like listening to them. Next up. This is the other album I really, really liked, which is Inverted Land by Voyage Future off Villain, which is a record label we've discussed many times previously. And this is just like ambient, meditative nature wave. Yeah. And I really, really liked it.
There's a visual album on YouTube of this with just sort of like footage of nature and landscapes that have been kind of like touched up in After Effects to make it more science fiction-y. One of the tags on this is solar punk. And that's sort of like, that should be a topic episode.
Yeah.
What's the deal with solar punk? Because it's not just it's a sort of catch-all term referring to sort of a specific vibe, and not just music, but more in like games and fiction of like hopeful science fiction futures based on like, sustainable power sources, and like, what if Pokemon, but real, and, we're not facing extinction or whatever. We're just having a thriving civilization. So like what's going on at on Earth and in Star Trek without all the spaceships going on. I guess that's kind of like solar punk a little bit, but that's something we should, reserve for a new episode. I really did like this too. It's just, nature wave is also a good way to put it. It's this kind of ambient that invokes the sounds of nature, waves, wind, and that kind of thing. And it's a relatively short album, but it's very relaxing, and it's very just pleasant on the ears.
Yeah, and I think just also just heading into the winter season, more of this type of ambient, either relaxing like this or, a little less relaxing, like Witch Bolt, which we talked about, or Mauricio, the other ambient albums. Definitely, I think what I'm largely in the mood for around this season. So I think that's why those 3 really stood out to me. Well, that brings us to our last album, The Berkeley Sessions by Scanner and Neil Leonard. And this is just another live. We recorded ourselves jamming a bit and put it out a decade later. So Berkeley is, of course, a famous and prestigious music school in Boston. So it was just a jam between a bunch of people who are either visiting, I guess, or students there at the time, or they have a lot of people who come through, famous musicians and stuff. I guess they just had a lot of these jams and recorded it and put it together. It was part of a residency at the Berkeley Interdisciplinary Art Institute. So...
yeah, it's really good jazz. Like, again, I don't listen to a lot of like new jazz, but this. I feel like I should get more into it. And also another jazz fusion album with other tags, a cinematic soundscape, which it does kind of have that feel. I was reminded a bit of the cinematic orchestra when listening to this. Yeah,
I can see that. Yeah, it is one of those ones that is, I don't want to say unfortunate because it's their right as musicians what to do, but one where they don't have everything to just listen to on Bandcamp. They just have a few tracks. And then, you can buy a CD or the digital album.
It is all on YouTube, though. So
that's true.
Yeah,
that is true. But just really great jazz jams tacked on at the end, just as a little something extra.
Yeah.
All right. That brings us to the end of our album journey for this period. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it this far through these ramblings, I hope that at least one or two of these albums stick out as something you might want to check out. Definitely check the show notes for all the links and anything else. And thank you so much to everyone on our Discord who's shared these. And even if you shared something that we didn't get to this episode, because I didn't scroll back far enough in the channel, always appreciate all the recommendations and all the discussion around it, especially because I feel like I have a lot of interest overlap with people on that Discord. So it works out. But next episode, what are we doing next episode? I don't know, because Ross is going on vacation, as we said. So we haven't done any planning. We'll figure it out when he gets back in early December. So we might miss an early December episode too, to be fair.
I mean, I get back December too, but I'm going to be, just probably.
You got a lot of catch up to do.
Yeah, I gotta be jet lagged too. I gotta get over that probably. We'll see.
Get over it. Whatever. You'll land a half hour before you took off. Doesn't matter.
That's
like
true.
It doesn't even happen.
Didn't even happen.
It's like it's like the Langoliers or something.
So yeah.
But in all seriousness, we'll be back in December for something for the Patreon and at least one public episode, probably be seasonal and or holiday related, given the time. Then I expect we'll probably do another break around Christmas. We'll talk about it more next month.
Yeah.
But definitely keep an eye out for that. If you like what we do and you want to check out more of it, of course, we have a Patreon, Nightclerk Radio at patreon.com. We got bonus episodes, essays, art, this Discord that contributed to this episode, et cetera, et cetera. Definitely check that out if it interests you. You can also find us at Nightclerk Radio, basically anywhere. Gmail, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, et cetera, nightclerkradio.com, whatever works for you. However you want to reach out to us or interact with our stuff. Wherever you do choose to do that, if you can take a moment to hit whatever like or comment or heart or whatever, really helps a lot. And, we always lastly advocate building community. I mean, especially now. This is the first recording post-U.S. election, not to date ourselves. A community is going to be more important than ever. So get out there, make friends, make frenemies, talk to them about music. Yeah. And as today shows, you can talk to them about more than vaporwave.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.